Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, the host of the VentureFizz podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 359, and today's guest is Matt Douglas, founder and CEO of Sincere. Boston has this legacy reputation that you can't build consumer companies in the area. Yet, there are so many great companies that have scaled in the consumer industry, like Wayfair, DraftKings, iRobot, SimpliSafe, and so many more. Plus, don't get me started on how many brands, especially footwear, are located in the Boston area. Anyway, Sincere is another example of a great consumer company at scale. It is highly likely that you've used one of their products like Punchbowl to plan a party, Timehop to relive past memories, or a Memento where you can collect and preserve memories together for a group video or photo album. Sincere's latest brand is Lovebird, a new platform for the wedding industry, which is taking on the Knot and other outdated incumbents. And as Matt highlights in this interview, there is more coming from Sincere. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics, a discussion around the legacy of an entrepreneur and what led Matt down the path of starting a corporate foundation at Sincere for charitable initiatives, Matt's background story, growing up with 5 brothers, and how he started his entrepreneurial roots early on, getting his career started and how he became the youngest product manager at Adobe, his brushes with tech luminaries like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Alexis Ohanian, Justin Kan, and Dharmesh Shah, the background story of Punchbowl, and the 3 characteristics that he was searching for in terms of building a business, why the expansion into the wedding market with Lovebird made sense for the company and how they are differentiating themselves from the competitors, Matt's philosophy around buying premium domains, and a hint about his best 5-letter domain that is not even live yet, and so much more. Okay, quick side note. Is your company hiring? If the answer is yes, then what are you doing to build up your company's employment brand? If you don't have a content strategy, then it is highly likely that you're just flying under the radar. The good news is that we can help. A subscription to VentureFizz includes a content playbook for sharing all the details on your company, people, and its culture. We leverage all formats of storytelling to include video, podcasting, employee profiles, and so much more. Reach out to info@VentureFizz to get all the details. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Matt. Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Very welcome. Great to see you again, Keith.
Oh, great to see you. So I think this is a long overdue podcast because in the archives of VentureFizz, you were like one of the OG bloggers. So when I first started VentureFizz as a side project, I was pulling in blog content from entrepreneurs, investors, and you were one of those entrepreneurs writing great content that was perfect for my audience. So, we weren't, it was like syndication of content. So thank you for helping VentureFizz find its way in the early days.
You're very welcome. I'm impressed. I mean, you guys have hung in there for so long, and that's part of our story as well. So I'm super impressed that you're still at it, and I agree, well overdue for a conversation with you.
Still at it and thinking of other things, and a lot of VentureFizz, a lot of what we do, it's actually coming full circle to the origination of the idea. So it's just interesting how you experiment, but then you realize, what we were doing actually was working. Why did we try to fix it? So now, based on what you've accomplished through the years,
Yeah.
you've built like an IAC type of business in Boston where you have multiple brands under a consumer umbrella. So I thought it would be helpful for founders that are listening to this on, building a company that has multiple products under the umbrella.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first thing I'll say is this is not something you do when you start out. And it's certainly not something you do in the first 5 years, and maybe not even 10 years, and maybe not even 15 years. I've been at this for 18 years, Keith. It's weird because I'm only 26 years old, so I don't know how that happened. But I've been at this for quite a while. And we, for a long time, were known for our flagship product, Punchbowl. And as the business grew and as the business expanded, we started looking at other opportunities. We were actually looking at other opportunities when the world changed for everybody, and we hit the pandemic. As I like to tell people, raise your hand if you saw that coming, right?
Right.
I don't think anybody saw that coming.
Oh.
In fact, I was asked yesterday, like, what's your 5-year plan? And I said, well, what if you had a 5-year plan in 2019? How would that have worked out for you, right? So we don't think 5 years in advance. We have some ideas, but really we focus on about a year at a time. But what happened around the pandemic is I had been starting to look at some ways of expanding and growing the business. And then that, of course, accelerated because regardless of your politics, if you are in the gathering business and the president of the United States declares, do not gather, that's a bad day for your business, right? Punchbowl is all about gatherings, right? So
Right.
for those viewers who don't know, Punchbowl is one of the leaders in online invitations and digital greeting cards. Uh, and with online invitations, we're talking about kids' birthday parties, baby showers, graduations, events that happen throughout the year, Halloween coming up, Christmas holidays. These are events that people gather in small groups. And in 2020, we couldn't gather at all. So the first thing that happened was we looked into what are other ways that people celebrate, and I came across a handful of businesses that were in the world of group videos. So creating a group video celebration, if you will, a virtual celebration. And so our first foray into second brand was building Memento, which is one of our core brands now. We acquired a business that became Memento, and so then we became Punchbowl Inc. with two brands. Time went on, business kept growing. Our ability to grow the umbrella got even bigger, and we engaged in a conversation around memories because we know that celebrations are really important, but almost as important are the memories that come from it, right? We'll talk a little bit later, I'm sure, about my family, but we have older kids now, and when I look at some of the pictures from their fifth birthday party and their seventh birthday party, it's amazing. It's incredible. And so I made a list of all the memory apps that I admired and I wish that could be part of our company. And there was one that was number one on the list. And that is a brand that you probably know and lots of people know. It's called Timehop. And I'll tell you that I think it was 9 or 10 emails until I got a response from the team behind Timehop. I was relentless. Finally had a meeting with the folks over there, including the CEO, a guy named Matt Raoul. And I'll tell you more later, but we also acquired Timehop. So then we had this interesting issue, right? So now we have a brand called Punchbowl, a brand called Memento, a brand called Timehop. And the question is, how do we communicate how these businesses kind of work together, right? The idea that you can host a graduation event, you can host that kid's birthday party. How do you create a memory from that lasts a long time? And then how do you relive that memory 4, 5, 10 years from there? So, I'm proud of a lot of things that we've done over the years at the company. I think one of the things I'm most proud of, and I don't know where it came from, was this idea of sincere, right? I have been at so many events, Keith. You've been at, I've been at events together, and people would say, "Oh, there's Mr. Punchbowl," and I was always like, I guess. I mean, it's a good brand. It's not great. I always tell people, the Punchbowl brand's like a 7 out of 10. People think I'm being too negative, but look, I think it's good. But somewhere along the way, I was trying to figure out what's the thread between these brands. And I was reading a book, I was reading something, and it was late at night, I remember, and I jotted a note down. When I really get in that brainstorm mode, I just take out my phone and I just jot notes down. And I remember waking up in the morning and looking at me. The note was like really long, had lots of different ideas, and then it had this word in there. It said sincere.com. And I had gone to that site and tried to figure out, like, is it anything? Is anybody using it? I'm somewhat of an expert in domains. I know a lot about domains, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we got to talk about that because you've got some premium domains under your umbrella.
Yeah, and Sincere is a pretty good one. I mean, Sincere, I give it a 9 out of 10. Only it's not a 10 out of 10 because the S could be misspelled with a C, right? Sincere, for those people who don't understand how to spell. So that's an issue when you talk about domains, but it's pretty darn good. And more importantly, it is not only a reflection of the brands, right? It's what does the word sincere mean? It might be interesting for us to look that up real briefly. I remember looking it up, and it's like it does not necessarily mean everything's rosy. but there's a truthfulness about sincere, an earnestness about the word sincere. And I remember thinking to myself, well, what's more sincere than kids' birthday parties, than graduation events, than baby showers? I mean, these are the most important, meaningful, and really sincere events. And then there are other things that I want to share, Keith, is that, well, I don't really resonate with being like Mr. Punchbowl or whatever, but I am sincere. I am very much a sincere person. And the key characteristic about being sincere is that does not mean that you're going to always hear what you want to hear, right? I'm known for telling people what I really think, trying to be respectful about it, trying to be nice about it. But being sincere means telling it like it is. And that is definitely me. So I love it. I was at a high school event with my kids the other day, and one of my friends looked at me and goes, "Do you ever wear anything else?" Because I didn't dress up for you, Keith. I wear this pretty much all the time. I got a bunch of them, and I love it. I love the name Sincere. I love what it represents. And then there's one more layer, and stop me if I'm going too long on this because I feel passionate all about the brand stuff. But there's one more layer, and that is I went through a personal existential crisis as well when the company started becoming more successful. I was trying to figure out, like, what does it all mean? Why bother? What are we trying to accomplish here? Right? I'm surrounded by people who have a lot of money. I grew up with not much money. I have all the toys and things that I want and need. I mean, want, right? And so I was thinking a lot about, and this sounds, full of myself, and I get it, but it really was what I was spending time thinking about was legacy. Like, what is the legacy of this thing, right? Am I just making money for this, point of making money? And at what point does it become about something else? I'm not sure how much we'll touch on personal life issues, but I met a woman. I was married and divorced, and then I met a woman, and she is in the nonprofit world. She spent 25 years raising money for great organizations, including Planned Parenthood and From the Top, which is a music organization in Boston, and all these different nonprofits. And we were talking about this issue because I was getting request after request after request about, here's $500, $200, $300. And I looked at her and I'm like, how can any of this spraying and praying money really be helping? And she said, well, it does help, but it doesn't make a huge impact. And I said, well, I want to make a big impact. How can we make a big impact? And she was the one who looked at me and she said, well, why not do a corporate foundation? And I was like, well, what's that? And well, a corporate foundation is where the company sets up a charitable arm and the company feeds that charitable arm money. And then you have a team in place that has a grant cycle, et cetera, et cetera. And we can talk about the foundation more in a minute. But after, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months of her and I talking about it, I said, okay, fine, we will do a foundation, but only if you run it. Because she's one of the smartest people I've ever met. So back to the brand Sincere. I'm blessed to have a blended family now. Actually, just got married about a month ago. So
congrats.
Very exciting. We have the Brady Bunch. And in this house, we have 3 different last names. So we've got my last name, we've got my wife's last name, and then her children have her ex's last name. So 3 different last names. And so part of the branding of Sincere Foundation, I'm thinking about legacy, about what this becomes, about our children and our family. And Sincere Foundation will be the vehicle that we use to continue to do charitable work and hopefully do more and more positive things in the community. In fact, my plan is to take a bunch of my shares of the company and put it in the foundation so that someday when we exit, then the foundation is the beneficiary. So long story, Keith, but there's a lot of different pieces. You asked about Sincere as an umbrella, right? So you've got Sincere from the corporation standpoint and why it makes sense for the brands. You've got Sincere in terms of how it reflects on me as the founder. But then you have this legacy piece of Sincere Foundation. And you may have heard that we're doing a lot of branding of Sincere in and around the Boston area and in Massachusetts, because we believe the foundation will be our life's work long after the corporation. So someday the corporation will go away, the foundation will remain, and we believe Sincere will be a brand that is well known and respected in nonprofit work. So I'm going to say something that maybe we'll have to edit out, but it's something I joke around with, just for the record. It's a joke. I look at myself as a teeny tiny, tiny Bill Gates, right? So Bill Gates made a ton of money, right, doing Microsoft, and then he did a foundation with the Gates Foundation. I'm not at all suggesting I'm Bill Gates, right? But the notion, the structure of the idea of making money over here, and then look at what Bill Gates has been able to accomplish as the Gates Foundation, incredible work. I'm not saying we're going to do anything like what they've done to eliminate malaria, but
it's
a very, very, very small version. Was
Yeah,
that?
you're
Yeah,
philanthropic.
philanthropic vision.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Well, let's rewind the clock. Let's talk about your background. So
sure.
where'd you grow up? What were you like as a kid?
Well, I grew up in Long Island, New York, so I'm very much a New Yorker. I swear too much, and I still have that New York grit. I love being in New York City. I grew up outside the city, so in the suburbs, but going into the city was a routine thing as part of my childhood. I remember my mom got her hair done in New York City. So take the train, get her hair done. We would go in there, obviously, for the holiday season and go into museums. So I feel very much like a New Yorker. Grew up as a Mets fan, as the Mets were in Long Island, and sadly also a Jets fan. It's like a disease I can't get rid of. I was born with it. It is what it is. So very much a sports guy. Grew up playing baseball. Love baseball still. I still think it's the greatest game ever invented. But I was a hustler, right? I was a guy who figured out pretty early you could make money, and that would give you freedom, right? My first job ever was there was a strange man who lived down the street that was a friend of my brother had a friend who was his stepfather. This guy, very eccentric guy named Ben Lenz. Ben has unfortunately passed away, but his house was like a staircase that creaked backwards, and he had this garden in the back. He was married to a woman named Pam, and they called their garden Pam Bamonium, which I thought was clever. But I was hired by Ben to help him in the garden. And I mean, I'm talking like 10, 12 years old. I was hired. So I figured out pretty early I could make money, and I would just help him in the garden doing different things. And I was that kid who shoveled. I can't believe that people don't do it, because I used to make bank when the snow, the snow fell. I would be working all day long, and whatever it was, $10 a driveway or $20 a driveway. I was making money. So, people have asked me, like, when do you remember, like, first being an entrepreneur? And it's like pretty early, right? I figured out that pretty early. I'm one of 6 boys, so that's a lot. So I have 4 older brothers and 1 younger brother. And everybody in this little town of Seacliff, New York, knew the Douglas boys. And the reason they knew the Douglas boys is that my brothers, from the very top all the way to the bottom, they're super duper academically smart. And I'm not exaggerating here. I think I'm right about this. So Elliot was valedictorian of his class. Joel was valedictorian of his class. Jonathan went to Dartmouth and got a 4.0 all 4 years. I mean, it just goes on and on, right? And so I was not as academically smart. I didn't have that gift like some of my brothers did. And I remember my father telling me at one point, Matthew, you're not the smartest of my sons, but you'll make a lot of money.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll take it, right? So, and I don't know for sure, but I have a pretty good feeling that I probably have made most money of my brothers. So, I was a kid that, kind of grew up in the shadow of these really smart brothers. Expectations were high as a result. College was not a question, it was a certainty. And again, best colleges in the country. Elliot went to MIT, and Joel went to Carnegie Mellon, and Jonathan, as I mentioned, went to Dartmouth, and on and on, right? So, grew up middle-ish class, sometimes lower middle class, depending on, where we were. And, I remember when my parents got divorced and we moved out of that little town, I remember realizing, oh, our house was kind of the most run down of any of the houses in the town. So, moved in high school to Amherst, Massachusetts, which was a really hard transition. Sometimes I tell people that the peak of my life was 8th grade. because I had like multiple girlfriends and I made the all-star team for baseball. And then we moved and nobody knew who I was. And I hurt my shoulder. I didn't make the baseball team. And high school was a mixed bag for me. Went to college at the University of Rochester. That story is interesting. As a New Yorker, but a naive kid, I remember thinking to myself, I want to go back to New York for college. Well, nobody told me that upstate New York is not New York, right? Eh. So the reason I chose University of Rochester is that I also played music as a kid. So following in my brother's footsteps, Elliot played the tuba, Joel played the trombone, Jonathan played the euphonium, Eric played the tuba, I played the trombone. So it was a very much of a that's what you did. I've told my daughter this that I wanted to play saxophone. And one of the memories I have is my mom telling me that we could not play saxophone because we couldn't afford the reeds, right? That you have to actually buy reeds. And I tell that story to my daughter because she, without any information from me, she chose saxophone. And that was a very poignant moment for me. And she still plays saxophone. So
That's cool.
But I went to the University of Rochester because I saw a brochure of the Eastman School of Music that was part of the University of Rochester campus. And it had this incredible chandelier. And I decided that, wow, this would be a cool opportunity to go to undergraduate University of Rochester and take some classes at the Eastman School of Music. So I ended up going there and spending a lot of my time at Eastman. I spent a lot of my time in music. And people have asked me, why did you choose music as a major? And my answer was, well, because I was learning the most. Of the classes I took, it was the most interesting to me. I took music history. I took music theory. It's hard, really hard stuff. The hardest class I've ever took was oral training, ear training, where they would play a tune on the piano. You have to write it down on a staff. Incredibly difficult stuff. And graduated, on time in 1996. And along the way, I should back up because the important part of the story here is when I was a senior in high school, I had worked, not just shoveling in snow and for the weird neighbor guy, but I had gotten a job at the Amherst Cinema in Amherst, Massachusetts, and I became essentially the manager. Where many nights I would be managing. It's a small one-screen theater in downtown Amherst. My buddies and I worked there, and we ran the place, and it was a great experience. It was almost home away from home. It was home away from home. I would spend a lot of nights there, do homework there, weekends, made a lot of money. One summer, I picked cucumbers in the day at the farm, and then I went at night and at the cinema. So I worked hard, made a lot of money. But the real story takes a turn when I was a senior in high school, looking for another part-time job. On the guidance counselor's office, there was a piece of paper that was, they're looking for some office help, essentially. And do you remember those days where you'd have the poster that had the little tags and you're supposed to take each tag and everybody would take the phone number? Well, I looked at this posting, and I never forget. I looked at the poster and it was like a software company. I didn't really know what that meant, but it was a company looking for office help, walking distance to the high school. And I remember thinking, that's mine. I took the whole poster. And people tell that story because that's, sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to push a little bit harder, right? So I joined this company called Specular International. It was a startup out of UMass Amherst, a startup in the graphics and animation business. They were building some of the first 3D animation software for the Mac. And I learned so much at Specular. It was started by two guys named Adam and Dennis. I was there not at the beginning, but pretty early on. Every day after school, I would go and work at Specular. My first job was literally, I'm not joking here, my first job was literally stamps on envelopes. And I remember going to the office manager, Carolyn, and I said, Carolyn, I think you can get a machine to do this rather than stamps. And so she's like, oh, okay, why don't you go to the post office and figure that out? So I went to the post office, and turns out there's a free machine you can get that stamps, because we were sending out mailings. This is how we did direct marketing. The product was 3D animation software called Infinity, 3D Infinity, and it was creating 3D objects and that were used in various print materials and animation, and I was the mail guy for a while. And as time went on, as the company got bigger, I got more and more responsibility. I remember doing a bunch of data entry. I remember starting to help with a little customer service. And then I graduated high school. And one of the things that I've learned is it really is about relationships, right? Keith, you and I hadn't talked in a decade or something, but I remember having a positive interaction with you. It's always about relationships. And that was the case at Specular. And I had made some great relationships. And so every summer in college and every break in college, I went back to work for Specular. And when I graduated college, I had one job offer. Guess who? Specular. So I joined this 3D animation company right out of college. At that point, I was a channel marketing manager, I think my title was. I have the job offer somewhere. If I remember correctly, it was $32,000 a year, something like that, which was not terrible, but no,
Yeah, that's not terrible. I started out at
uh,
19.
started 19. How about that? I should find that.
19,000 a year. I was like, yes.
Yeah, I should find that letter. But it was, the company had done well. I I went to every Macworld trade show. I went to um, NAB, which was in Las Vegas, the National Association of Broadcasters. Went to all these different trade shows. And then I did an Apple Market Center tour. Oh my God, Keith, if I could just talk to myself for 2 minutes. My job was going to all these different Apple offices around the country, and we did these seminars, these training seminars, and it was just me. So imagine this. I would be welcomed into the Apple Market Center by the Apple person. Customers, potential customers would come to these training centers, and I would train them on how to use the product, demoing the product. It was a script, but it would often go off script a little bit. And then at the end of it, we would take orders and order sheets and fill them out. And I mean, if someone had just told me like this little fruit company is going to go somewhere, I was in the Apple Market Center.
This fruit company.
1997, 97, 98. I was there. Specular was sold. It was sold to a company called Meta Tools, which was well known in the industry, which became Meta Creations upon the sale. Meta Tools, Meta Creations was based in Carpinteria, California. Where? Carpinteria. I never heard of it at all. It's near Santa Barbara.
Okay.
And everybody at Specular was essentially laid off except for a few key people. And I found a way to negotiate a job. Somehow, some way, they found out that I was a product expert. And that was a really important lesson and something I carry to this day. I don't like people who don't understand the product. I value throughout the organization at Sincere people who know the product, right? We have a couple people who know it inside and out, but every single person, whether you're customer service, whether you're marketing, whether you're finance, they need to use and understand the product. And if you don't understand the product and you don't know how to use it, that's a problem. And I learned that lesson early. I was offered this job as an evangelist, a technical evangelist at this new company. And I flew all over the place. I flew all over the world. I went to Japan a couple times. I went to Australia. I went to all these places because I knew the product. But Meta Creations was a shit show. I mean, it really was. The CEO was doing bad things. I remember hearing very clearly back in the day, this is box software. He was shipping boxes of software to his house at the end of the quarter in order to make the number, right? So pretending it was sold, there was weird stuff going on. And I did not want to stay there. A lot of people from Specular had dispersed, and it's amazing where some of the alumni went. Original designer of Twitter was from Specular.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible, right? And some of the people from Specular went to Adobe, including my mentor, a guy named David Trescott, who I'm still very close with. And David and I saw each other at a mutual friend's wedding. I think it was Martin's wedding. And he pulled me aside and he said, "Matt, I want you to come to California and join us at Adobe." And I was like, "Trescott, I'm not moving to California." No, you are. You got it. And so anyway, I agreed to interview, right? Because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was looking for a job. And so I flew out to California and I was so over my head. I remember learning that the folks who had been in this job before had gone on to do great things. And the job was product manager of a company, or rather a product called Premiere, Adobe Premiere, a video editing product. And I was 22 years old, Keith, and I had really had no idea what I was getting myself into. Next thing I know, I get a very lucrative job offer to move across the country to go live in San Jose, California, and become the youngest product manager in the history of Adobe. I
Wow.
think I still hold that title. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, 22. That I mean, most people don't know that product management is a thing.
Yeah. I showed up in San Jose corporate housing, very interesting time in my life. And one of the first days on the job, Trescott's like, "Come with me. We're going upstairs." I was like, "What? Where are we going?" We go up to the 18th floor at the Adobe Tower. Now, at the time, Adobe was maybe 700, $800 million business. I hadn't quite hit $1 billion, I believe. And we go up to the 18th floor to the offices of the CEO. There was a co-CEO, John Warnock and Chuck Geschke. And there was a conference room, and there was maybe 8 or 9, 10 people around the conference room. And little did I know, the topic of the meeting was, should we kill off Premiere? And I'm sitting there going, wait, I just moved across country, took a
Right.
new job, and I'm looking at Trescott going, what is this meeting about? He's like, oh, don't worry, don't worry. It's very typical. So the meeting was about whether they should kill off the product because at the time, I think it was doing about $7 million in revenue at a 700-ish million dollar business. That's not big enough. That's not big enough to warrant the resources. And this guy, David Trescott, he's an incredible storyteller, incredible, smart human being, and he went and told an incredible vision of what dynamic media, as he called it, would be at Adobe. I mean, this is literally 1997. And we walked out of that meeting, and I looked at him. I'm like, "So do I have a job?" He's like, "Oh yeah, you're fine, you're fine." So we built this little division called the Dynamic Media Vision Division. It was initially just Premiere and After Effects. You may remember know that product, and then
Sure.
over time added other products. It was the some of the hardest I've ever worked. I routinely did not go home. I routinely took a little nap on the desk and kept working. I showered at the facility several times. I didn't really have a life, Keith. I just worked. From 97 till 2001, nearly burnt out. We built a team, we built a business, we shipped version after version of box software of Premiere, and we grew that business from about $7 million to about $50 million. So
Wow. Yeah.
really big learning. So I'm going to pause for a second and just kind of take a breath and make sure we kind of canonize what happened, right? So here I am, high school student, join a small startup. Incredible learnings. I mean, the learnings I take to this day of how I built Sincere. Um, shift to, moving across country and incredible learnings working for, arguably one of the best software companies that's ever been built, right? I just told this story the other day. I was at the Windows 2000 keynote address. Bill Gates and Carlos Santana were obviously Bill was the main guy, but I was at the day before. My job as Adobe representative was to actually direct Bill and Carlos meeting on stage. And the whole shtick was Bill was going to give Carlos Santana the first ever version of Windows 2000, and Carlos was giving Bill a signed guitar to auction off as part of the charity thing. I was there the day before the actual big keynote address. I was filming on a little DV camera. Bill Gates calls someone over, points at me, and like basically get this guy out of here. And then they explain to him, no, he's supposed to be there. We're filming a little, and I go on stage.
Corporate spies.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on stage with Bill and Carlos and a few other like Patrick Stewart was there and a couple other celebrities, and I'm the one directing the goings on. Hey, okay, Bill, hand Carlos the first ever version of Windows 2000. Okay, Carlos, please hand Bill the guitar. And Bill took the guitar the wrong way. I'm like, Mr. Gates, I'm sorry, you're holding that the wrong way. I have all this footage, and then that night, the editor, I have to look up his name, but the original editor of Friends, the video editor of Friends. He and I worked together for, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours creating this little commercial that was then shown the day of the actual event, which was the next day, the Windows 2000 keynote. So I had incredible
That's a
exposure.
great story, Matt. Like
Yeah, I learned so
that's why I
much.
love this podcast. I
Yeah,
get these little nuggets where I'm like,
yeah.
what?
Yeah, it's crazy, right? I
Who
mean,
got the
that
video
night I
for
went to
Windows
this
2000?
I went to this private party with Carlos Santana. And Patrick Stewart was there, as I mentioned. Jay Peterman from Seinfeld was there. All these other
Nah.
here I am, the product manager of Premiere. So, but Keith, it nearly killed me. It was a lot of work. And by 2001, early 2001, I had it. And I remember by February, March, I was just so burnt. I was depressed. I was overworked. Um, I literally just left my job, and I didn't have a lot of money. I had enough, but it was like I lived in Palo Alto at that point. At that point, in March of 2001, and I couldn't do it anymore. I was gonna, and I tell people that I made playing piano my full-time job. So I literally played piano. It's what I always had wanted to do, and I wish I had played guitar then because I play guitar now. But I played piano. I wanted to be Billy Joel, but didn't work out. Um, I remember one particular Saturday. I want to talk about nuggets. Ready for this one? Whew.
Mhm.
One particular Saturday, I lived down the street from the farmers market in Palo Alto. And I remember, like it was like very distinctly, I remember seeing a car pull into the little parking lot, and it had a license plate with this weird word on it. And I remember like, what is that? It said Google. And I was like, I remember seeing the guy come out of the car, and I was like, who is this dude? And why does he have this weird word on his? So I wandered around, and I'm pretty observant, and I wandered around, and I made sure to go to like the same vegetable stand as the guy. And I just said to him, I'm like, hey, so what's this thing on your license plate? I saw you get out of the car. What's Google? He goes, oh yeah, it's a new search engine. And I was like, a search engine? And he's like, yeah, we're building this new search engine. It's really cool. You should check it out. We're hiring. In fact, we like only have a few people in the company, and it's going to be something big. And I was like, uh-huh. So I'm like, I remember literally looking at it. I don't remember his face that well, but I remember asking him, I said, so how is this thing different than Yahoo
Yahoo,
Search, Alta
ask.com.
Vista,
Yeah.
Ask.com, and whatever, Ask Jeeves, I think it was called at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no, he's like, it's nothing like that. It's totally better. It's faster. It's gonna be so huge. And I was like, okay, see you later. That
So
was
was
it.
Larry Page or Sergey like
Just think if I had taken that conversation a different way, right?
I
One
know, yeah.
story
Let
there.
me hear more about that.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
so then you went back to B school, you went to
Well, not
UNC.
quite. One other story because we're telling.
Okay.
I
All
was
right.
called by a recruiter. Remember, I was a well-known product manager in the area, and I was called by a recruiter. And I had a couple interviews. I was offered, ready for this? Drum roll. I was offered the first ever product manager of iTunes. Turned it down.
No way.
Turned it down.
Uh,
Well,
so
it is what
you
it is. So
basically would have been
then,
like pretty much working directly with Steve Jobs.
yes,
That was his baby, I assume, right? Like,
I would have been working with Steve. Yeah, true story. I actually met Steve Jobs once. You want to hear that story, or we can move on?
no. Well, I love Steve Jobs stories, definitely.
Okay, this is a good one. So it was Macworld, maybe I think the year 2000. Part of the reason I left Adobe, it was I was so frustrated by the fact that Adobe and Apple were like this, like they were bosom buddies, right? But I was in charge of a product called Adobe Premiere, and Apple was well known to be building a major competitor called Final Cut Pro. And I remember being so frustrated because it was like our engineers, a couple engineers actually left to go to Apple, and I wasn't getting the support. I didn't feel like we were getting support at Adobe to really go and compete. And so here we were at Macworld, I think it was the year 2000, and Apple was introducing Final Cut Pro. And we were introducing the latest version of Premiere. And so I found myself in a large circle of people before the show opened that morning. And in that circle was my boss, this guy, David Trescott, his boss, a guy named Ron Akamoto, who actually eventually went to Apple, and a handful of other people from Apple. And up walks Steve Jobs. And there was enough friendliness between the companies that I think it was Ron that said to his counterpart, hey, this is my team, the Adobe team. And Steve walks up, and Ron says, oh, Steve, nice to meet you. And Ron says, "Hey, this is the group product manager, David Trescott." And Steve reaches out, "Hey, nice to meet you." And then Trescott says, "And this is the product manager of Premiere, Matt Douglas." And I cannot tell. I literally was like, "Steve, so great to meet you." And he went like this. So blah, blah, blah. He turned away from me, basically thinks I'm a piece of dirt.
Right.
That was my meeting Steve Jobs story. He was
I
indeed.
almost shook his hand.
I almost shook his hand. I've heard so many stories. Indeed is a terrible human being, apparently also brilliant and amazing. But yeah, was treated me like dirt. So that's my I almost story.
All
So
right.
yes,
So
then I went to B school. I went to B school, and the reason I went to B school is a buddy of mine was saying, he knew I was burnt out. He's like, "I think you'd learn a lot." He had gone to Stanford Business School, and I applied very late to different business schools. Classic MJD story. Got waitlisted at the one I wanted to get to, which was University of North Carolina. I was relentless in trying to get in, and the thing that got me in is I went to a sneaker store. I bought Carolina blue sneakers. I took a picture of them and I sent it to the admissions director and said, "Look, I even have the right shoes." Next day I got in. So
no way.
yeah, two
That's
days
awesome.
later, I was on a plane to North Carolina from Palo Alto, never looked back. And then, spent 2 years in North Carolina, learned a ton. Wish I had done a little bit more entrepreneurial stuff in North Carolina. I did kind of the core track. They're pretty well known for their entrepreneurial stuff. So that's one regret I have. But then I graduated from Carolina in 2003 and moved up to Massachusetts, where my then girlfriend was going to graduate school. Um, I applied for different jobs, and very similar to why I chose music as a major, I decided to join Bose Corporation because I had done video and I wanted to learn audio stuff. And so I joined Bose, and I worked there from about 2003 to 2005. And that takes me to the moment where I started the company, because I was really in a culture that they valued chit chat and talk, and we worked on things that never shipped. It was the culture of Bose is very interesting. People go there for 30 years. It's a very academic culture. Dr. Bose was essentially a professor who started a company. It wasn't the right place for me. And so I started working on ideas. And people ask me, "Well, when did you get the idea for Punchbowl and Sincere?" I'm like, well, I went looking for an idea, Keith. I was a student of many different business folks, including Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's someone I greatly admire. And I was reading a lot of books, and I was looking for a business that had certain characteristics. So those characteristics are pretty important. So the characteristics are, number one, I was looking for something that had repeat behavior. So if you look at the Warren Buffett businesses, everything from insurance to mattresses to ice cream, right? Repeat consumer behavior. That's one characteristic I was looking for. I was looking for something that had money in the channel. So what does that mean? I had done channel marketing, and in any channel, if you're buying a car, if you're buying a computer, there's every step of the way someone has to make money in order for it to work, right? So there are products that sell directly from the manufacturer, but most of the products that we buy, a mattress, there's the folks who actually physically design the mattress. Then there's the folks who actually make the mattress. Then there's the distribution of that mattress. Then there's the retail of that mattress. Everybody along the way has to make some money in order for it to work. So that's what I mean by money in the channel. So I was looking for something that had a high margin in the channel. That's where some business school background helped. And then the third thing I was looking for was something that had built-in virality. So what does that mean? I wanted a product where when one person uses it, it infects other people to use it, right? So by its very nature, using the product causes other people to use it. Maybe sometimes involuntarily, and that's okay, right? And I was a user of Evite, which was one of the products in the market. And I recognized right away that Evite had that built-in virality. If you send an Evite to somebody, involuntarily, those users who receive it are using your product and hopefully then become core users of their own. So that's what I was looking for, those three characteristics. And I went through a bunch of different ideas. I like to tell people I could have ended up in the dental business because I could tell you a long story about this dental business I had idea. I had another idea, which was around software development. I spent a long time researching. There's actually a local company in Boston called PTC. I had done a lot of work understanding their business, understanding how we could play alongside them. I mean, I went lots of different areas. And ultimately, I had a moment where I'll never forget. I attended a funeral of someone that had gotten killed young, hit by a bus, I think, in Africa on a mission. And I remember the church was packed with people, incredibly packed with people. And I remember the speaker got up there and basically said, "Shame on all of you for not understanding that this person had struggled with mental health, that the reason they went to Africa is because they didn't feel supported. And of course, it took this person dying to pack the church." And I came up with this crazy idea. And in fact, at my wedding, my best friend talked about it. I called it a funeral, right? So the idea is like, why do we wait until death in order to gather everybody, right?
Right.
So I came up with this idea that we could build a business to encourage people to have a end of life celebration before end of life. And I called it a funeral. It's so dumb, but interesting still in some ways, right?
But the concept makes sense.
Concept's interesting. So I started looking at and learning about the party supply industry. And I started learning about, what it would take in order to build something like that. The party supply industry is really interesting and then very validated. There's a lot of money in that channel, high margin product. And in fact, did you know that one of the businesses in the party supplies business was actually purchased by Warren Buffett? So Oriental Trading is owned by Warren Buffett, which is, I remember when that happened, I was like, yes, very validating moment, right? So yeah, that was the very, very first iteration. Funeral company was called Fiesta Technology. People ask me all the time, how do you get to where you are? And I'm like, well, you just start, right? One step and another step and another step. And, people want the quick success. It doesn't happen. Keith, you're
I'm living it.
You're living it, proof, right? So it's step by step. It's spending time on things that I remember my co-founder Sean and I, we spent a lot of time on this crazy credit card matching idea where you would put in your credit card and then there was retailer stuff that so the local party supply store. I mean, just crazy stuff that never worked, right? And the first thing we really did was, I was the genesis of the idea, but I found this guy who I was working with at Bose. I had hired him into Bose, and I said, "Hey, Sean, can I tell you this thing?" And Sean's one of the most wonderful human beings in the world, and he's so non-judgmental and he's so positive. And we went to a bar together in Framingham, Massachusetts, and I just showed him some concept slides, and he was like, "Oh yeah, this sounds interesting." And so we just started talking and working together, and he was my buddy, and figuring out ideas. And the first thing we did is we decided that my background was going to trade shows, so I was like, we should go to a trade show and learn about the industry. So in 2005, I think it was, we attended the Halloween and Party Trade Show in Chicago, Illinois. It was this weird trade show of people who sell in the Halloween and party industry. And we went and we set up a suite in a hotel, which was, again, out of the playbook from Adobe, out of the playbook from Specular. Booked a bunch of meetings with folks to try to learn about the industry. We had hired a friend of his, who's now a very important person in the company. His name is Devin. We would go down to Devin's little apartment in Hingham, Massachusetts, and we would work on conceptual graphics for this product that we called Funvite. And we took those graphics to Chicago and met with a couple dozen people, some of whom were like, didn't care, and some of them who didn't understand what we were building, and some of them who probably would love to have a conversation now with me that, I tried to have with them then, right? And so we showed off this product, and step by step by step by step, right? I figured out pretty early that Funvite was a pretty terrible name. Also probably a copyright issue, trademark issue. And Funvite became Punchbowl version 0. And, at that time, I would go to every single event in Boston I could go to. And I would meet all kinds of people. I'd love to tell you some of those stories. But one of the people I met was original founder of Wayfair, Niraj, and I met there. If you look back at who was there, the who's who, I'm pretty sure Mark Zuckerberg was at several of those meetings that I was at. I have his cell phone number in my phone. That's all I know. So I certainly have met Mark along the way. And I met Dharmesh Shah, who founded HubSpot, and the founders of Reddit along the way, Alexis. Um,
Yeah,
and
fun fact. I mean, Reddit was
yeah,
started in Boston. Y
yeah, it sure
Combinator's
was.
first
In fact,
first
in fact,
session.
I was at an event at MIT. So I'm not a developer, right? I like to tell people I play one on TV. But I would go to these developer meetups because I knew and I understood that I need to find a co-founder, I needed to find a developer to help me build this thing. And I remember one particular meetup that I went to, I think it was like a PHP meetup or something. It was at MIT, it was in the MIT classroom. There were probably about 30 people there, maybe. And there were little presentations. I don't know who organized it, but it was the first time I saw Dharmesh present HubSpot. And he went up to the front of the room and without any slides or anything, he drew on the board like large businesses and small businesses, and he called something the SMB market, small medium business market, and he kind of described why there was a gap in the market between the big boys and the folks that don't have enough money. And so he described why he could build a software product that would help these businesses generate leads. So I saw Dharmesh present. I met him there. I think I met him prior to that. He and I formed a little friendship, and we used to go out to dinner every so often. We haven't done that in a while, but I consider him a friend, and we trade emails and text once in a while. And he went on to obviously build something really, really big. And Alexis and I consider him a friend as well. He and I trade emails once in a while. And Steve, the other founder of Reddit, don't know as well, but I'll tell you another story about one of these web meetings. There was a couple guys that I had become pretty close with, Justin Can and Emmett Shear. They had a little product. Those guys. So
Oh
they had a
yeah,
little
of
product
course.
called Kiko, Kiko. It was a calendar
Mhm.
product around the same time I was starting out. And I remember being really disappointed. Emmett was a really good kid, and Justin, I don't know. I never really could get on the same page with Justin. Justin's, well, I'll tell you in a second. He's a little out there, and Emmett was a guy deeply respected, and I was so sad when he told me that they were going to move to California and
Mhm.
start something. And when I tell you that Justin's a little out there, I remember when he moved to California, he told me he was going to wear a camera on his head 24/7. Like
Yep.
that's not, I mean,
Justin TV.
Justin TV, right? And Justin, like, I was like, okay, dude, whatever. And then there's that infamous thing where like his friends called the cops on him or something, and he's in bed and he's got his camera on. That's just not me, Keith. I guess, it's like Justin Jacobs, I've known for years, Runkeeper. He put on a phone suit and ran the marathon. I'm like, I
Hmm.
can't do that kind of thing. Maybe I would have been more successful if I had. Who knows? I don't know. Just not who I am. And Justin wore this camera on his head. And I remember him telling me that he had figured out that people were watching him play video games. And
Hmm.
again, maybe I'm just too old, I'm too stodgy. I don't know. I was like, okay, that's cool, Justin, whatever. Why would people want to watch you play video games?
Right.
So
Hmm.
guess what that became? Twitch.
Twitch. Yep.
Sold for $1 billion, right? So I
Yep.
was I was in and around this world, right? Sometimes I wonder if I
Yeah,
should have
Web
moved back.
Innovators Group was
Right?
amazing. David
Yeah,
Beisel, like
yeah.
Dropbox and
Oh, Dropbox.
ThreadUp.
Yeah.
I mean, there's tons of
Tons
companies
of
that
them.
came through there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're one of them. We're one of them. Now, um, I'm pretty darn happy with my life and how successful I've been. I'm gonna shock our listeners here. Sincere is not $1 billion business. Oh well. Um, we're very, very successful. I've got all the things I've ever wanted and then some. So, it was a wonderful time to be part of the industry, to learn and meet all those people. I wonder if any of those people remember meeting me. Who knows? I don't know. Obviously some of them are my friends, but others I know. I haven't talked to Justin in years. He probably remembers who I am. Don't know. Yeah, I think he's doing a VC fund now or something. So, but yeah, I've been in and around a lot of well-known people from the very beginning at Specular through Adobe. I mentioned Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and all these different people, the Dharmesh and those kind of Reddit folks. I mean, I've been on the, maybe not the immediate concentric circle, but a couple concentric circles away from it for my entire career. And I'm a technology guy. I'm a business guy. I call myself a cold-blooded capitalist sometimes because I do believe in making money, and I'm also the little engine that could, right? I think I can, and just keep going. That's probably my favorite book growing up, right? I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, and you get eventually, look, I can do it, and I did it, and this is the prime of my life. I mentioned I just got married in early October. We went on a honeymoon to Paris, and in Paris, a handful of days after I got married, I turned 50 years old. So, like, literally, and that was a really good day. So this is the prime of my life, and I'm a little bit like, nervous about the fact that everything's firing in all cylinders. I love what I do for a living. My kids are healthy and happy. We've got this beautiful blended family, and the challenges that I deal with now are nothing like the challenges of starting a company. There were so many dark days, Keith, so many times where people told me to throw in the towel. I got a quick little story, and I don't know if he's still alive or still around. There's a venture capitalist. I don't know if he's a private equity guy or a VC guy in the Boston area. I use him as a verb now. His name is Joe Tischler. I haven't spoken with him in years. But to get Tischler is to exactly what happened to me. I got introduced to him somehow, and Sean and I went to visit with him and try to pitch him on funding our company, this little company called Punchbowl, and as a startup. And I'll never forget being in that conference room, and I showed him what we're working on, and he just ripped us down to shreds, Keith. He told me that what we were doing was a waste of time. He talked about Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg a lot, and he told me that I should do something else, and this would never amount to anything, and it's the worst pitch he's ever seen. And I walked out of there, and I will not be ashamed to tell you that I got in the car, and I had tears running down my face. Sean gets in the car. We just sat in silence for a few minutes, and I'll never forget what Sean looked at me and said. He goes, "It's one guy, Matt. One dude." So I often think about, wonder where Joe Tischler is now, because I'm glad I didn't listen to him. And I'm glad Sean was there as my emotional support to be like, all right, it's one dude. All right, let's move on. Let's turn the page. Let's figure it out. And I met a woman named Lucy McQuilkin who worked for Intel Capital. She was investing in consumer businesses. She said no 6 or 7 times, but I kept coming back and I kept showing our progress. And she would tell the story as like, I didn't invest in the idea as much as I invested in Matt. And that's how I do investments as well. I invest in people, not necessarily products. And I know Dharmesh does that same thing. So, we eventually raised a very small seed round. I was able to run around and get some other folks involved. eCoast and Angels in New Hampshire got involved early, and that was the seed money enough to hire and start growing this business. Prior to that, I'd used my own money, and I'd done some consulting work, and I had taken these dollars, and I was borrowing money in order to invest in this business. I look back on some of those spreadsheets. It's amazing what we did, but a lot of money I spent of my own. I hired an engineer at $10,000 a month at one point, my own money, and I didn't have it. I was in debt and borrowing money, and worked out.
So how did you build a consumer company, right? Like, so it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's not like you raise a boatload of money just to buy ads and compete on SEO or paid, acquisition. So
Yeah.
how did you end up building Punchbowl to what it is today?
Well, the first thing I'll say is remember what I said earlier about virality, built-in virality. We would not have been successful if we were just trying to get consumers in the front door. We had to have something built in order to get the flywheel going. So that's a really critical piece. Building a consumer product is super duper hard. I tell people all the time, I get advice for building a consumer company. It's like, you're either going to have to raise a ton of money, which is incredibly, almost impossible to do in the Boston area, Boston, New York, forget about it. I've been rejected more times than I can tell you. Um, you have to either relocate and raise a ton of money, or you have to have something built in, or you have to go viral, which I don't think is a strategy. It's a luck, right? So we were able to spend a ton of energy refining that flywheel, right? So one host comes in, plans a birthday party for 20 people. Those 20 people are involuntary users that interact with the service. Then how do you get those people to become voluntary users to plan their event? And I'll tell you, our product was not very good. I look back at some of the first, you can go to the Wayback Machine and go look at mypunchbowl.com, as it was called back in the day. I didn't have the domain punchbowl.com. And it wasn't very good. In fact, it was pretty bad. But it did some basic things well. And the one thing it did well is it really helped that flywheel. So that's a critical piece of any consumer app, right? Really thinking about virality. How does your usage impact other people's usage? So that's really key. That's really critical. I have around me incredible team, an absolutely incredible team, from the developer side, the marketing side, finance side. And my dad was right. I wasn't the smartest of my brothers, but I do have one superpower. And I'm not ashamed to admit it anymore. My one superpower is I know how to find great people and retain them. I am surrounded by people who are way smarter than me, who I consider some of my closest friends. And some of the hires that I've made, we've gotten this far into the podcast without mentioning Blake, who is one of the original developers. Blake is an incredible human being and an incredible developer. He was early on. I mentioned Devin already. I mentioned Sean. Devin, Blake, and Sean and I, we built this product pretty much. A lot of conversations, a lot of building the core product, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of looking at data. And then we brought in a guy that I met at business school, going back to University of North Carolina, met a guy named Eric Peden. Eric was actually at my wedding as well. He's a close friend of mine, and he is a smart math numbers spreadsheet guy. And he was a really critical piece of the user acquisition part of it. So he figured out Google SEM. I remember in an infamous story, I asked him, "Hey, Eric, have you ever heard of SEM?" He says, "SE what?" I said, "I'm going to FedEx you a book overnight." So I sent him a Google SEM for Dummies book. And I sent that to him, and he read that thing in a weekend, and he called me back. He said, "This is really interesting." I said, "Great, you're hired." So I hired him on a contract, and he was a really key part of that story. So you have to have great product. You have to have great user acquisition. You have to have great design. You have to have great marketing. And I look at the organization and fast forward to 2024, and Sincere has incredible talent across the business. And that's how I've been able to do this. We're the best kept secret in Boston, maybe in all of East Coast. We have an incredible team. We've built an incredible business. It's growing really, really nicely. It's very profitable. It's just an incredible story that we have the ability to continue adding brands. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Lovebird, our most recent announcement. We launched Lovebird last Tuesday, and this came out of my own need. I was, as I told you, engaged, trying to figure out what I was going to use, and realizing that, look, there's no really great solutions right now in the wedding market. You've got The Knot, who hasn't innovated in a long time. You've got Zola. They focus on gift registries. I wasn't going to use Punchbowl for our wedding. That's more like for birthday parties and graduations and baby showers. I wasn't going to do paper. I'm a digital guy. And so I came to the team and I said, look, there's a huge opportunity here. Can we be the leading platform for guest communication in weddings? And I think the answer is yes. So over the last year and a half, we built a very compelling product. I was user number one, worked great, used everything of that product to make our wedding happen. And we had a beautiful, high-end, elegant wedding a handful of weeks ago. And we launched Lovebird to the world right after I got back from my honeymoon. Keith, the response has been incredible, absolutely incredible. I think we have a winner here. I think this is going to be a big story for the Sincere family of brands. Lovebird, if you think about what it is very similar to birthday parties back in 2006. When I started Punchbowl, most of the birthday market was paper, right? So you'd get these little boxes of birthday cards and you'd give those out as invitations. Now you can't find a paper invitation anywhere in the birthday market, right? So I believe that by the time my girls are, right now they're 14, almost 13, by the time they're of marrying age, I don't think they're going to be thinking about paper at all. And I think Lovebird is going to be the leading platform for weddings. And we
I
have a
agree with you that with that
yeah,
because it's like you get the invitation and it's like this heavy stock and so expensive. Yeah, it ends up in the trash can.
in the
Like, because
trash, right? And so
after
the
the wedding, it's
economics,
like, dunk.
yeah, the economics make sense. Why spend a few $1,000s on paper when
Right.
these kids are growing up in the Snapchat generation? So my one concern is we might be 7 years too early, like we were with Punchbowl. But I do think that over time, Lovebird will be the leading platform for wedding communication. So we love the brand. Went and bought that domain. We think it's perfect for the wedding business. It's elevated. It's elegant. And now we have this great group of consumer brands, right? We've got Punchbowl, we've got Timehop, we've got Lovebird, we've got Memento, all under the Sincere brand. And I'll tell your viewers one thing else. Don't tell anybody. We got some other things up our sleeve. Some other great domains, some other great products that all fall under the Sincere umbrella. So stay tuned for what we do in the future.
All right. So there's 2 points I want to bring up here. So the first one, based on the research I did, the scale, right? So, Punchbowl, 325 million online invitations and digital greeting cards. Time Up, 125 million memories every day. Memento, 15 million memories have been collected.
Actually,
So
20 million now, but yeah, yeah,
20
it
million
gets
now. So
all those bigger.
this is scale.
Yeah.
Yet it has been done very, you talk about your team. You don't have a massive team. You haven't raised enormous amounts of capital. You've raised some capital, but so it was a very capital efficient way of building a business that, it's 18 years. It wasn't like we raised, 50 million, 100 million, and we
Yeah.
just spent money on ads and built a user base. And then once the money stopped from the investors, our business stopped. So,
Yeah.
uh,
No,
so
it's very sustainable. We've been offered lots and lots of money. I don't want to do it. I don't. I've seen that. I've seen that story. I've seen that burn out. We were trying to build a sustainable, profitable business, which we've done. I think there's different ways to grow a business. I believe very strongly in the core economics of what we're doing and understanding those before you start just wildly spending. We're actually at the point now where we are wildly spending. In fact, this week is unbelievable to me. We've got billboards, we've got MBTA, the train station takeovers, we've got print ads coming out. I mean, the marketing budget for Lovebird just in the first week or two just hurts my brain a little bit, frankly. It's very, very large. So and we're doing that as we're into the Q4 holiday season. So Halloween, important event for Punchbowl. You've got Memento being used for holiday events and group video, group photo events. We've got the holiday season coming up with of course Christmas office parties and gatherings and Thanksgiving and New Year. So we are in the thick of it for our business. We're a Q4 business, and so we're launching a brand new product at the same time as the largest marketing spend the company's ever seen. We're doing it all profitably. We're doing it all with cash that we have. And we're doing it in a way that doesn't have us beholden to some overlord VC investors. So we control our destiny, which is great. Our board is small and nimble and agile. Our executive team has been working together for more than a decade. We've got a great thing going, and I'm not going to change a darn thing. And some people ask me, well, how long are you going to do this for? I'm like, I don't know. It's fun, right? I mean, it's way more fun than it was back in 2007, 2008 when I was clawing and scratching to stay alive. My children are in high school and middle school. There's some idea that I got to figure out what the world looks like when my youngest is out of high school, which is still a ways away. What does my life look like then? I'd like probably some more flexibility, but nowadays you can work from anywhere. So we'll see what that looks like. I've got a bench of great executive team folks. I mean, I was gone for my honeymoon for a week and a half, and I barely did anything for the company. I was able to focus on my wife. So we've got a great team, got a great set of products. I'm shocked by the growth this year, so it's been great. And I think Lovebird represents something very big for the company in terms of what we can do when we have these resources, when we have these ideas. And weddings are obviously a great extension for the celebrations and milestone business. And if you think about our memories products, Timehop, Memento, right? Again, what a great fit with the wedding business. So it makes a ton of sense. And like I said, we've got some other tricks up our sleeve. Stay tuned in the coming years.
All right, so going back to the beginning of our conversation, you own some premium domains. So
Yep.
how has your strategy been going about acquiring those? Because it's, punchbowl.com, lovebird.com, these are sincere.com. These are not, one word, true spelling.com domain names.
Yeah. Well, I mean, patience, part of it, right? Understanding value is part of it. Understanding creative ways of getting the deal done. So, it's a priority thing. One thing that those people who work with me know is I am absolute um, steadfast on priorities. Everything can't be number one, right? There's a number one, there's a number two, there's number three. I've got my little Q4 priorities sitting there right there. Reminding everybody that it is really important to prioritize your work. And when it comes to domains and decisions around spending money, I believe very strongly that in a consumer business, domains matter. And it is a prioritization of resources and a prioritization of finding the right brands and executing on it. So my best domain is not something that's live, for the record.
Ooh, okay.
And it's 5 letters, .com. Uh, Really, really good. Um, we've got a bench of other domains, right?
Party.com.
No, it's way better than that.
Wow.
So it's interesting that I didn't expect to become kind of a domaineer. I guess I am, sort of. I have connections in the industry. People have taken notice that we know what we're doing. I've never overpaid for a single domain. In fact, I've underpaid. I believe very strongly this domain that I just referenced, the 5 letters, the moment we close on that transaction, I think we made about 5 times what it's worth. I think I got it for about 5 times less than it's worth, but we'll see if it's true. And in the consumer business, of course, domain can really change the trajectory of your business, right? There's no doubt when we went from my Punchbowl to Punchbowl, things changed. Memento is a great brand. I mean, think about Memento as a brand for memories. I mean, can it get any better? And we've got big plans for that brand. And we went searching for the right brand for the wedding business, right? So I wanted something elevated. I wanted something that would help the brand fly. So, I'll never forget walking into I can't remember where my fiance at the time and someone that we know said, "Oh, they're the Lovebirds," and I was like, "Yes, that's exactly the right domain." I'd already purchased the domain. So sometimes you buy the domain well in advance of when you need it, and sometimes you buy it in order to fit the product. Yeah, I mean that 5 letter domain may never amount to anything. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
Dharmesh and I share that in common. He likes domains too. He bought a
Mhm.
4 letter domain. So
Paul English too. Paul English owns a
yeah,
boatload.
Paul. Yeah, and Paul. I've known Paul for years. Had a call with him just a few months ago. So yeah, I mean, I think we have the opportunity here to do great things with Sincere. I want to come back to the foundation because it's really important to me that we can make money and we've made money. I got money. What are we gonna do, right? What are we gonna do with it? I'm always a little amused. I don't think the kids have a clue. My kids don't really have a clue about how big this thing can be, right? And when I think about my legacy, my wife Rebecca's legacy, the team that we have at Sincere and their legacy, I hope the next chapter of my life is really figuring out how to take some of the skills that we have at the corporation and leverage it to do even more with the foundation. We've already done amazing work. It's all public information, but we've already donated, I think, $500,000 in the first 2 years to local charities. We're doing another grant cycle right now. We're endowing the foundation with more and more money every year. Our board's behind it. Our investors that remain are behind it. Our company's behind it. We talk about it often with the team. It turns out to be a great recruiting tool. People love working for a company that is doing good in the world. And Keith, we're sitting here a few days before the election of 2024. There's a lot of suffering in this country. And no matter what happens on Tuesday, it's going to be a result of a lot of the suffering, food insecurity, housing instability. The foundation, in a very small way, is making an impact in Massachusetts. And if every company that was making profits were to do these kind of charitable and efforts, I think we would be in a much better place as a country. And I'm excited about what we're doing there. I have purpose now, right? For years, I did all this without real purpose. Oh, I want to make money. Okay, well, what happens after that, right? What happens when you have the nice car and the nice house? Now we have purpose. We're trying to grow this thing as big as it possibly can be so that we can impact as many people positively with the foundation. So, my vision is in 20 years and 30 years, I fly in for a corporate nonprofit event, where we donate. We're a big sponsor of the event, and we're doing good work. And, hopefully I'm finding balance between fun, places to visit in the world and spending my time with people I love and seeing the world, and also doing really good work. And I think the foundation has given me more purpose than I even realized it would.
Yeah, that's amazing that you're able to build that. All right, so what are three apps you can't live without? Of course, it can't be a app from your family of consumer products, Slack, Gmail, or Calendar.
Okay, three apps I can't live without. All right, let's start with a slightly strange one. Fish Weather is a great app. Okay, so Fish Weather. So I'm a boater. I like to fish with the kids. Fish Weather will give you a great view of the tides and the wave height and the wave frequency, and it really helps me understand, looking out in the future, like what are the great days for boating, right? So when you have a great calm day for boating, there's nothing better, right? You get out in your boat, you go as far as you want. You're not worried about wake or anything like, waves or wave height, and it's great to be on the water when it's a calm day. So let's go with Fish Weather as one of them. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a music app, right? We could spend an hour talking about the debacle that is the Sonos app. I can't live without Sonos. And I don't know if you heard anything about what's happened. They totally screwed up the app. It's a big public story.
Oh, I didn't hear it, no.
Terrible, terrible management by the Sonos team. They really screwed it up, but I can't live without it. I use it every day. Listening to music is a huge part of my life and a huge part of my family's life. So we'll go with Sonos. And the third one, I'll go with something really boring, but I am fortunate enough to have some real estate. That's not where I physically am, right? To be able to, have places that are, to go, beach area. So I'm going to go with SimpliSafe, right? So SimpliSafe is a security system. And oh my God, does it give me peace of mind to be able to log on to my SimpliSafe app. I have cameras set up everywhere, and I can physically see the inside of the house and the outside of the house. And so I have properties that I can pay attention to remotely. So I used to have to go physically to these places, and it was always a good excuse to go. But with my complicated life, I can grab my app, and in fact, I can do it wherever I am in the world and check on the properties. And if, it's pretty amusing when I was in Europe and ding dong on the front door in a property that was far away, and I was able to have a conversation with the person, and I guess a car was blocking the driveway. Not my car, right? So, I would say, yeah, SimpliSafe. So Fish Weather, Sonos, SimpliSafe, those are three great ones.
Well, SimpliSafe, another great Boston success story, consumer
Great.
hardware, amazing company.
Indeed.
Cool. What about a good podcast or book recommendation for entrepreneurs?
There's one book I read that was really formative for me early days, and I always recommend it. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy, right? And the idea behind Blue Ocean Strategy is when you build a new business, especially if you're starting up, you don't want to enter a red ocean. A red ocean is a bloody battle, right? Hard to compete with the big boys when you're a startup. Blue ocean strategy is, hey, find an area of the market that is wide open, that you can develop a product or service in that blue ocean. And then over time, I mean, we're in a red ocean now, right? Our new product, Lovebird, we're definitely going after the incumbents, but that's not what I'd recommend for an entrepreneur starting up. So read Blue Ocean Strategy and develop a product or service that is in a blank space. Oh, I just quoted Taylor Swift. My kids will be so happy.
Well, I usually end the conversation with what do you like to do for fun outside of work? But I think through the conversation, we've already covered a lot of that. Well, Matt, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through your professional history, all the great stories along the way, of course, what the team at Sincere is up to, and obviously all the great work with the foundation.
Thank you so much, Keith. It's great to see you, and I'm so glad that you're still doing these podcasts. You've done so many of them. It's incredible, and just really honored to be part of that lineup of people. So thanks again, and it's great to see you.